So disappointing in the human being. I really like their coffee too. I went over just a little bit of what I thought of Skyward Sword HD in my last video. That was just a general consensus of what I thought of the game, but today I thought I'd dive deep into why I really like the Skyward Sword HD. It's weird, this isn't even the first remaster of a Zelda game we have on Switch, but it's definitely the best. It's the most divisive game in the series, hands down. And this new remaster is just as divisive as it was originally, with the Zelda Lost Wing amiibo, no new added content, barely any quality of life improvements, and it's now $60 when it originally retailed for $50. $60?! It's kinda dumb in my opinion, but I see why people are mad. But also, look at PlayStation. They sell the same game on both PS4 and PS5, but the PS5 version is $10 more, but nobody cares to bring that up. This is easily the best graphical style in the Zelda series. It translates beautifully to the Switch. The Wii was originally working with 480p when we got this, and even the Wii version still looks good to this day, and that's 10 years old. Everything looks like an oil painting, and I hope that Nintendo goes back to a similar art style like this in the future. All of the characters have amazing and unique silhouettes. I could black out this image right here, and you could guess exactly who it is. Master Chief. Damn it! Skyloft is one of the best hub cities that the Zelda franchise has to offer. It's so much fun to traverse this little town in the sky. And the ground area below, which will eventually become Hyrule, is just as fun to explore. No one area also looks like the other. Eldin Volcano feels hot, the Faron Woods feel like a breath of fresh air, and the Lanayru Desert makes me reach for my Hydro Flask quicker than Groose thought this was the Legend of Groose. With the Switch docked, Skyward Sword HD runs at 1080p 60 frames per second. Handheld, it's running 720p but 30 frames a second. It's crazy, this is a Wii game
in the palm of my hand.
And it feels like it runs even smoother than 30 frames a second. I cannot wait to see how this is going to look on my Switch OLED. I also can't wait to hear the soundtrack on the new Switch OLED because this score is an absolute masterpiece. First in the series to have a live action orchestral recording, and it shows. And you know what? I'm going to say it. I don't care. This is a better soundtrack than Breath of the Wild. I can already see the torches and pitchforks from here. Don't get me wrong, Breath of the Wild had an amazing soundtrack, but the music here is just so grand and epic. Albeit, sometimes it just plays tracks at times that don't really fit, but the music is still phenomenal. I think my only gripe with the music here though, is that it feels somewhat forgettable. Even though it's my favorite soundtrack in the series, I could barely remember any melodies. But I'm just gonna coin that to me having the worst memory ever. I know I'm part of the minority, but I actually really like the motion controls here. And I actually did just stumble upon these, and I'm so excited I did. Should I unbox them or not? Let me know down in the comment section below. It makes me feel like I'm actually in the adventure, that I'm actually Link. Doing the first Skyward Strike, it felt really badass. It's still better on the Wii as I remember, but what you're getting here with the Switch Joy-Cons is still really good. The stick controls though are arguably better. They're way more accurate and they still keep the gyro functionality. The stick controls do get rid of the camera, so it's a bit of a toss-up. So I actually found out you can hold the left bumper when using the button controls to use the camera, and that is so stupid. I should be able to use the camera freely. If anything, that left bumper should be used for combat. Now if I want to just look around the area, I gotta develop arthritis. I will be honest though, jumping between docked and handheld for this is a little mind-boggling.
Yeah, mind-boggling. You know, when things are so crazy, it gets your thoughts all trapped like in a bottle.
This is the first game in what feels like forever where I truly appreciated the Switch for what it is. Being able to jump between home and handheld is crazy. I remember that feeling from Breath of the Wild, being able to take my Switch in and out of the dock, having it on the TV, and then having it in my hand. And I got that same feeling again here with Skyward Sword HD. It may seem pretty obvious, but the combat is very specific to Skyward Sword. Some attacks require specific motion, and that makes you think on your feet. Some enemies have certain weak spots that can only be hit with the right motion. And that same principle also applies to the puzzles. You sometimes need to use a certain kind of motion with your sword in order to progress through the dungeons. It never feels overdone, which is really nice. It also gives you a really good sense of satisfaction when you figure it out on your own. I don't need you anymore, internet tutorials! And of course, like Zelda, there's a bunch of items to use here. My favorite is definitely the claw shot, just because it kind of gives me a Spider-Man feel, and I really like that. The bow and arrow is also just a classic, and you can never go wrong with that. And real quick, dudes and dudettes, if you enjoyed this video, be sure to click that like and subscribe button to see more content just like this. It helps out a ton. And give that notification bell a little ding-a-ling so that way you can be alerted for when I upload in the future. And be on the lookout for any upcoming live streams. As of recording this, I just streamed Splitgate and had a ton of fun doing it. You don't want to miss out on any live streams. Anyway, back to our regularly scheduled program. One of the big gripes that people have with Skyward Sword HD is how linear it is. But honestly, I don't really see that as a bad thing. It does result in some backtracking. Even though it does get a bit annoying, I don't mind it as much. At least every time you do have to backtrack, there's always a new puzzle you can access you couldn't before. Or the layout is completely changed, like the Faron Woods being flooded, or Elden Volcano being surrounded by bokoblins. To be honest, I only recorded the first 10 hours of gameplay just to avoid spoilers, and most of the time I was actually playing in handheld. The dungeons are so well designed here. They all have really fun puzzles, and yet you do have to backtrack, but it's still so much fun, like I said, and being able to have a new puzzle, it makes it so worth it. There's also really interesting boss fights here too. My favorites were Maldarok and Cloctus. God, why do I feel like I'm pronouncing that wrong? The boss fights also give you really cool use of the items that you get along the way. I don't want to get too spoilery here, but once you play it, you'll know exactly what I mean. Fi? Is it Fi or Fi? I don't really know. Fi helps out a ton with her hints. Sometimes I go around and I forget exactly what I'm doing, so this is a big help for me. I don't know about anyone else, but I actually had a really fun time using the dowsing mechanic too. Sometimes though, the game feels a bit unfair, like some puzzles I feel like I'd have no idea how to figure it out without a guide. Yeah, I'm gonna need that back after all. Alright, we're playing a Zelda game here, so you have to expect goofy and quirky characters. But honestly, they're really charming. They kind of act like theater kids in high school, and it definitely shows. Girahim is the villain, and he's like the wolf kid from every high school. You know exactly what I'm talking about. Every single high school had a wolf kid. As silly as it sounds, all these characters feel like real people. They feel like humans. Zelda and Link have a platonic relationship, and it's such a breath of fresh air. You actually care about the characters, which is something I can't say about any other Zelda game. Not that it even matters, but this is actually the first in the Zelda timeline. Well, actually, I don't know anymore because Breath of the Wild 2, it looks like that's going to be the start of Skyloft, so who knows, but you know, this is supposed to be the first game in the Zelda timeline. Seeing the Master Sword being crafted throughout the journey helps mirror how far you've come, and I'm not going to lie, it is so cool. Seeing the most iconic sword in video game history being crafted right in front of you, I'm not going to lie, it's unreal. I loved seeing it. That was probably one of my favorite parts about Skyward Sword. The side missions are also really fun too. These get somewhat backtracky as well, but it makes sense in the scheme of it all. The side missions can end differently depending on which course you take, and I'm not gonna lie, I really like that. It makes you feel like you're actually having an impact on Skyloft. The controls take time getting used to, but when they work, they work. The world is linear, but it's breathtaking to explore. The characters at their worst are goofy, but at their best, they're some of the best that the Zelda series has to offer. I could see why this game is so divisive, but I lean towards the side of loving it. Skyward Sword is literally perfect for the Switch. Its mix of controls make it the best version to play. This is definitely going to hold you off till the sequel to Breath of the Wild. Now, we just need Twilight Princess and Wind Waker in order to have all the greatest Zelda games on Switch. Anyway, dudes and dudettes, I hope you enjoyed this video. Be sure to click that like and subscribe button. And let me know down in the comment section below, what's your favorite Zelda game? For me, it's either Breath of the Wild or, of course, Skyward Sword HD. And I'm going to be making this into a series. As we're waiting for the sequel to Breath of the Wild, I wanted to take a look at all the games that are kind of similar to Zelda, just because we're going to be waiting probably another year or two, hopefully not 2 years, but we're probably going to be waiting a while, and dude, we're all itching. You know, bro, we're fiending. We're itching for that new Zelda game. So I thought I'd take a look at some games that are similar to it just to scratch that itch for us. I've already got a couple games listed up. I will be playing them soon. Anyway, dudes and dudettes, be sure to check out my live streams. I don't really have a specific schedule of when I do them, just whenever I feel like it. Anyway, dudes and dudettes, you're never too old or too cool to play video games. Major Pineapple out.